in a receptor mode.
Okay. So, hello everybody. This is Shirley Gutkowski with my good friend Victoria DaCosta, and we are hoping to help you open wide, not just your mouth, but your brain, and really think about some of these really highly bizarre that are going on in the world of health and medicine. So let's see. I see on the YouTube, oh, we're both on there, so that's good. And we're switching back and forth. Hang on one second. All right. So one of the things that we talked about at our last episode was not digestion, but palpation, and what are we feeling? What nerves are enacted when we're doing a bunch of things, including digestion? What about head and neck circulation? Not just circulation of the blood, but nerve conduction and nerve circulation, and how we can interact with our patients about that. So we thought we would really dive a little bit deeper into it today and just start with the beginning of taste buds. That's where digestion starts. There's a lot of conversation about, what do I want to say? Probiotics and eat your vegetables and yada yada about all of these different things that they're telling us that we can manipulate in our digestion. But nobody is really talking about the tongue and smell. So digestion really does start even with the eyes when you're just seeing the food. Then you smell the food and your saliva changes its composition so that you have the appropriate saliva for what it is that you are eating. Then the saliva gets moved around as you're chewing. If your tongue is not mobile and help the food to move from side to side, the taste buds aren't functioning 100%. They need to have that they need to have the food going back and forth in order to kind of really get triggered. A lot of the taste sensation is um, is dissolved in the saliva, and that's where you get a lot of the taste. So if you don't have saliva, for instance, if you have a cold and you're taking an antihistamine, your food is not going to taste very good. It's also not going to smell very good. So you need all of those different pieces to go along with that. So let's just spend a couple of more minutes talking about taste and the neurology that goes along with tasting and chewing and using the nose as an organ for digestion. What do you got, Victoria?
Well, right away, what do I think of when you talk about eating is the trigeminal nerves. The trigeminal nerves are the largest nerves on bilateral of our head that is the most looked at but ignored. They're looked at because of TMJ issues, or they're looked at because of mouth guards. They might even be looked at because of dental sleep. But are they really looked at in the sensory part for our digestion and our intake of food? Because intake of food is life. And I had to smile when you were talking about the taste buds, because when people get depressed, they eat what's called comfort food. And with that comfort food, and I've been there with the ice cream and the cookies too, how does that change my taste buds, and how does that change my neurology? Because I want to feel better when I'm eating. And I see interesting patterns. As a dental hygienist, I would see the way that people would chew on their food and wear their teeth out, and or they'd wear their crown through the crowns, and or what were they eating that was enhancing or not enhancing digestion. through those trigeminal nerves. Well, it's not just the trigeminal nerve, as we know, it's the hypoglossal nerve, and it's even the facial nerves are involved, and you've got the parotid glands that get involved. I mean, there's so much networking that goes on in the head and neck area that we in the dental industry ignore. I wish we wouldn't, because by looking at all of this networking in place, we have an opportunity like no other professional, not even in the medical world, to assess the inconsistencies of a person's lifestyle, all the way to their walking and running and eating and processing the food and okay, a data intake. Where's their data intake?
Yes,
Is
beautiful. Yeah, I like that.
so yeah, Shirley, your data intake is crashing, and we see it on a regular basis way more than anyone in the medical field, because we are inside an area of the body that they're not ever inside. So this is my frustration with
Yeah.
this lack of
So
communication.
let's just spend another minute on taste buds, because I think this is part of the entire disease kind of situation that we have in the United States, is that, and this is what I think that Kennedy might be addressing indirectly. I don't know that he's sitting around going, taste buds. But what we've got here is the food that is available to us is not food. It's almost something to eat. It is such a chemical equation that the body doesn't know what it is. The taste buds have been hijacked. You may find articles called looking at bliss point, BLISS point. That is the exact right combination of fat and salt and sweet that hijacks your taste buds so that you don't know that you've had enough. This is why you can eat a 14-ounce steak and feel like you never want to eat again, but a 14-ounce bag of potato chips or Doritos, nacho cheese, hijacks your taste buds and you always want a little bit more. Same with ice cream, same with a lot of these different fun foods. I think last time we talked about the difference between calling junk food, which still has the food on it, right? So just screw it. Just call it junk, because it's not food, and it's really not even something to eat. It is really a detriment to the human body, period.
Okay, I hear you, but surely I'm going to tell you, it's not going to happen on our watch. People are so brainwashed from these commercials, and their cravings are way out of our control. How can we make a difference? Is the education, I get it, but what I see is the consequences. We have the taste buds, but what are the consequences? I'm going to tell you right now, the consequences of what you said, hijacking the taste buds, is toxicity. Their bodies are becoming toxic. Their liver can't process the toxins and the chemicals, and so now you get fat. I see these people in these electric wheelchairs, and they're so fat they can't even walk to the front door. They have to, or they can't. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what happened in the tasting, in the data intake, that their body became so obese that they couldn't function, in the fat cells just grew. And it has to be from the toxicity, like you said, hijacking the taste buds, but there also,
And how these non-foods in.
yeah, there has to be some kind of a um, uh, reversal of and recognition and desire. But then you look at the brain juice, and now their pineal gland, because of the fluoride toxicity, they don't have a desire to clean it up. They're just,
Right.
they're listless. And I've worked with these kind of cases. There are the people who really are on board and care, and then there's the people who over care, and they're doing way more damage because they're
Right.
not listening to their body. I think it goes back to paying attention when you put something in your mouth and you taste it. what are you tasting? And what I find interesting is the toothpaste that I designed sometimes, and it was interesting, sometimes it tastes bitter to the patients, the
Mm.
polishing paste, and they'll say that too. They said, in fact, I heard this comment was, it tastes bitter. Well, it tastes bitter because they're so acidic in their environment of their mouth. And the ones that it didn't taste bitter is because their diet is less acidic and it's more alkalizing, and they have a more synergistic intake of food that balances out those, like you said, papilla and the taste buds so that they're not masked. I think what happens is the sugars mask the flavor tasting, or you don't taste the flavors as much in the food when you have a higher processed food sugar intake. And so, like you said, you don't have that sensation in your gut, which has the nerves from the brain, to say you're full. And so there's miscommunication. And it's a big
Well, because yeah, it's a big chemical equation. And I started on this whole thing. I was like, well, because I've had a weight problem my entire life, right? Just forever. My mother and father, were immigrants. They were living on a farm and they were, not heavy. My dad did become heavy. My mother is still not heavy, but I've always been heavy my entire life, except for some tiny windows where I tortured myself into weight loss. And I got to wondering, what is the problem? Why am I, 29 and still struggling with these weight problems? And I knew about this bliss point, and then I was like, well, what are taste buds even for? Why do we have taste buds? And evolutionarily speaking, if you go back to the time before time, the time before clothing, you will know that those taste buds are there to protect you against eating toxic foods, which is exactly what you were saying. The nose will tell you if it's gone south, if it's gone bad, and if you get it into your mouth and it's horrible, you're going to spit it out. You're not going to let it go down. But these chemical equations that they put in these bags and the cans and all this other stuff, it eliminates that organ. It eliminates that piece of digestion to disallow you from eating actual FOOD. And it forces you to eat vegetables that are covered in pesticides or glyphosate that you may even detect in the food if you weren't so desensitized by some of the other foods that are going in.
well,
A
wait a
good
minute. Though. I want to put something out there.
Yeah.
We are, as dental hygienists, what do we encourage? Brush, floss, brush, floss. They're brushing with chemicals. They're
Yep.
brushing with a paste that has full on chemicals, and it's coating their tongue. It's coating
Yep.
the inside of their mouth. They're swallowing this toxic paste. You can't, how many times does it say on the toothpaste, don't swallow?
Right.
Or even the fluoride treatments. We were taught in school, they don't make sure they don't swallow, put the saliva ejector in there. I'm like, the minute it goes in the mouth, it's being digested. So, our dentistry has done a number on really numbing the taste buds with our chemistry recommendations. Thank you, all these toothpaste companies. Before, people were brushing with baking soda, and they were,
Yep.
or maybe in the Middle East, a plant. They took a plant and they, massaged their gums and their teeth
Yep.
with the plant. Um, so how to reverse this and put it into a highlighted situation, I believe, is start with the morning care process.
Well, let me just go back one more step from what you were just saying, because on the skulls from antiquity, there's spaces between all of the teeth. There was no reason to use floss. There was no reason to, until we started eating plants, until we started eating foods that were, carbohydrate dense, there was no dental decay. Almost all of the skulls before 10,000 years ago have zero decay. Decay started showing up on these skulls when agriculture started taking up. I don't know what else to say against, eating eating too many plants and, and just having to get through all of that. In the morning care, what do you really need to do? You need to just get up and find your nearest squirrel to eat. You don't need to have a routine. It shouldn't be that
You
difficult to
sure about
manage
that?
your mouth.
Okay, you're saying no routine, but our dental training is all about routine.
I know it's
It's all about
cognitive
routine.
dissonance. We were trying
Oh my
to
gosh.
get on board with the changes that have been happening skeletally to help people to keep their teeth without managing the skeletal piece.
How-
Just chewing
no.
all the food that you can eat that we used to call food, that, fast food. Remember how you were so excited when your parents let you go to McDonald's?
Oh yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
A
Woo!
main highlight of
None
the
of
month.
that food requires chewing.
Yes. No, it was soft food. Right.
Yeah, it's all soft. And so the foods that require chewing, if the tongue is not functioning, is going to be extremely uncomfortable. There's a lot of theories in my head that I have to just wonder about because nobody else is asking the question, so there's not going to be any research to support it.
Okay.
Kids don't like vegetables, generally speaking, as a rule, a general rule. And maybe it's because they are supposed to be eating meat and not vegetables. And maybe we should be okay with that, you
Well,
know?
interesting that you point that out because as a child, they used to call me Picky Vicky because I wouldn't eat those vegetables.
Really?
I wanted fish. I wanted beef. I wanted my hot dogs, which is now I know what's in them, but I wanted the protein. And the more research I do on the cranial nerves and in the brain, it needs protein to
Do
develop.
anything. Yeah.
And the nerve and the sheath on the nerve. You talk about that coating on the nerves and the sheath. That is all coming from protein and frequency. And the meat has a higher frequency for digestion than a vegetable. So I would say you're looking and the chewing. Think about the stimulation and chewing something that's chewy and you're really stimulating those
Right.
nerves by chewing versus something soft and mushy and you swallow so fast. Um, it's going to be becoming interesting. I think the whole diet is going to be changing in the next few years because people are all over the place right now with information and but use common sense. If the nerves don't get stimulated by the chewing, correct chewing with balance in the in the alignment, which dentistry can play a big part of and should, your stomach will be messed up. Then your stomach is messed up. It's going to mess up the liver and it's going to mess up the pancreas. So, I look at this and I think, how can dentistry not go there with the scope of practice for medical when it's already medical in the mouth through the process of the diet? We are already connected. And that's where, we talk about this disconnect and roll a scope of practice, don't go below the neck. We already went below the neck when we went inside the mouth. Are they that stupid to know that?
So here's the perfect phrase. We are working in a shared domain. And I think we really all needed the silos to practice in and to get good in your discipline and the thing that interested you. What happened though is that most silos don't have windows, most silos don't have doors. And so what I'm saying now is that we need a permeable wall in our silo so that we can see other disciplines. For instance, there are 3 stages of a swallow. Speech language pathologists are in charge of this part of the swallow, right in the neck. So when I'm working on swallowing, I'm working on the oral phase. So it's just so ridiculous. If you don't have an oral phase, you're not going to have a pharyngeal phase, right? Or whatever the
Right.
esophageal phase. And so we're all in this shared domain. Do you remember learning about a bolus?
Of course.
Yeah. Have you ever made a bolus?
Have I ever spoken about
Probably never even thought about it. So I tell my patients that it's so important to have a bolus that it has a Latin name. So a bolus, if just to remind everybody, because sometimes you learn stuff and then it just flies out your head because you never use it, is after you chew food, you make a ball of food on your tongue and
The
you
wall.
swallow the
Yeah.
ball of food down the center. It doesn't go from the cheeks back. So when you're chewing food, it should stay inside of your teeth for the most part. And then the bolus is created, and if you're eating something like an apple that's super juicy, you're going to swallow liquid in between. And these are things that kind of get lost in elderly patients where they choke on saliva and stuff. But you have to chew the food and make a bolus of either just the one food or a little combination of foods. If you put too much food in your mouth because you're five people's mother, you have to hurry up and eat. And you just start shooting it back. You're losing touch with the earth. You're losing touch with your nourishment, with your data input. You're just losing touch with everything. So slowing down and chewing smaller and smaller bites and chewing with your lips together so that the saliva can help with your digestion is really, really critical.
Well,
And
let me,
all of that movement requires cranial nerves to
yeah.
work in harmony.
Well, you're talking about the vagal nerve, which is the uvula. If it deviates to one side, there's a problem with gagging right now.
Mm-hmm.
And people are gagging because they have compression on the back of their neck. Why do you have compression on the back of their neck? Is because they're looking down at the phone. So they're compressing these nerves that would be helping to digest the food. Here's number two. How long is your lunch hour? And if you get into your lunch hour too late, then you're rushing your eating. And then you get into this mindset of I have to rush my eating, and you have to rush your breakfast eating, or you drink your breakfast. You don't even eat it. And then you
Right.
rush your lunch hour, or your lunch hour is rushed because of your schedule. And then you're snacking, right? And then that's not really even chewing. You're just swallowing
Right.
liquid all day long, which is supposed to be food, but you're not putting into a bolus like you need to get the exercise and get the grounding. These people aren't grounded. Then you get into your car, drive home, and then you've got dinner. Well, are you going to have dinner? Or are you going to drive through to get your dinner? And then
Right.
driving through to get their dinner, they're eating it while they're driving.
I think that happens on the lunch hour too. It's not a lunch hour, it's an errands hour. And they chase around this whole time and then they drink a salad, you know? And there's nothing happening. The muscles in the face begin to atrophy. I have to wonder every now and then, with all of these ladies getting their Botox and shots and surgeries to make them look younger, if they just chewed their food, they would get some muscle definition in their face,
Doing
you
is
know?
anti-aging is what you're saying.
Chewing is anti-aging. There we go. That's awesome. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, it is. Chewing is
Yeah.
aging because working with and we've talked about Dr. Paul Whitcomb's work in stimulating the cranial nerves, but I've noticed facelifts just from the stimulation of these facial nerves in these cranial nerves, just from the circulation coming from the stimulation. And chewing is the stimulation to get the circulation up and going into the facial features. You've seen it when they have those droopy eyes, and that's poor digestion. That's the kidneys aren't processing right. It's showing in the face. That's why I love these facial reflexology charts, because people, if they really studied the areas in the face, they would see the areas in the body that aren't circulating right. And food is I would say food is the circulation, and it's the frequency. So if we don't have the right amount of frequency in the data intake for that food, we're going to age faster. We're going to, it's going to wither. Our faces get withered and wrinkled. It's very fascinating to me when I see these people in their 80s and 90s that look like they're in their 60s. It's because they're chewing their food. They're taking the time and they have the investment versus the ones who are just processing, running through the, takeout and not eating home cooked meals, or not putting the investment into their nutritional um, intake and substance. That nutritional substance is just as important as chewing, because like you said, they are swallowing their salad. It's liquid. Where's the
Yeah.
chewing? Where's the bolus? And also, I would say, as a dental professional, our job is to educate, of course, but are we living it? That's another thing. Are we living it in a way that we can set the example and give our own examples of our own experiences with chewing? What a concept. We're in the mouth, we're in the data intake area. Do we even talk about chewing other than you're grinding through your teeth?
I don't think I've ever talked to a patient about chewing the whole time I was a clinical hygienist. Never even,
And the bolus of the food for every,
never happened.
yeah.
Like I said, we all learned about it. We had to write it out, we had to describe what a bolus did and how to create one, but it was gone. It was gone. Along with gingival massage. Do you remember learning that? Never did that outside of school either.
Right. I remember though learning the tongue, it's like a surfboard and how it
Yeah,
bolus the food. We did learn that. But what did
I
we
know.
how do we teach it to the patients to
We
use?
don't have time. We have to teach them about flossing. And I'm like, let's reestablish an order of importance.
Thank you.
Is flossing important if they're drinking their salad? No. Is flossing important, or periodontal charting, which I'm on a violent movement against doing that anymore.
Hey,
To not Oh, it's so dumb. But patients aren't chewing their food. They're not breathing. They have zero airway. They're not healthy. And periodontal probing is very likely moving that periodontal disease along the pathway towards the front teeth. And
I always,
they're just not getting the health that they are expecting out of our hands as a clinical hygienist if all of these other things are skipped.
well, what we want to take away every time we have our podcast, we want to have a takeaway, right? Think about this to our audience. Why don't you look online and get a tongue chart? Tongue charts are so informative. I have tongue charts I would use all the time. And I even take a picture of their tongue, upload it into the monitor. You've got these cameras now. Show them their tongue on the surface, show them the tongue underneath when they touch the roof of the mouth, so that they can see that that's their body part. And then you can see the coating on the tongue. The shapes of the tongue really give us the information of the systemic issues. And just start there, just with the tongue charts, and keep it simple. But think
Keep
about
it super simple.
looking at tongue charts to start learning that when you open them up, when they open the mouth and you see a tongue right away, and oh, it's got the water mark, the teeth marks. That's you're dehydrated. You're not drinking enough water, or the yellow coating, or the texture on it. What kind of diet, then, now they can't talk, your hands are in the mouth, and you can educate them about soft foods and diet and bolus chewing. And that's it. Keep it super simple so that the takeaway for them is, I didn't realize that I had this issue starting, and it's early indicators. So our podcast should all be about, recognizing early indicators and helping share that information with the patients. But charts are simple to find online now, because,
They really are, yeah. So, and you don't want a taste bud chart because those are impractical. You
right.
want more of a Chinese tongue diagnosis kind of a chart, right? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking photographs of charts, actual photographs that have the diagnosis of the tongue type.
Mm,
They actually have a picture of the tongue, a photo
yeah.
image
And
with,
then an overlay with the,
no, to this side. Like the one chart I love
mm,
to use is labels the tongue by numbers. So if it's a number 19, I go to the right and I look at number 19, and it says liver
ah,
deficiency. So you want to be able to show them a picture of their tongue and a picture of the tongue that they most likely look like, and they
mhm.
they're there. I think there's like about, I want to say 40 different pictures of tongues in a chart that I use. And into the side, I look at the number and I correspond that number with the picture of the chart with their
Right.
tongue. And they look at it and they look at it, that looks like my tongue. Well, yeah, look at the systemic underlay of the contributing factors or what it is. And then you have an open discussion with the patient about helping to increase the circulation. And I think taste buds is all about circulation. Going back to taste buds, you
Yeah.
can they can be covered up and or stagnant. I think what's happening is they get stagnant because of the foods with the high salt and the sugars. Then they don't taste foods. And then when they taste like the toothpaste that I created with the essential oils and the alkalinity, it tastes bitter. Yeah, it tastes bitter because you've been eating food that's highly acidic. And anytime you, I don't know, has this ever happened to you? Your diet is, you try and keep it as simple as possible and clean, and then you eat processed food and it doesn't taste good. You almost spit it out because
No,
it
that's
tastes
how I know I'm really just sucked into this hijacking of the taste buds. If I were to have a potato chip right now, even though it's been months and months and months, I would be just back into the bottom of the bag. I'm just it's not a it's you've I don't know about you. I don't know if you've ever had a weight problem, but it's a problem. It's a problem.
I think it's more about craving. I know I crave.
Yeah, I always have a really bad sugar this since summer, and it took me months to get over it. Months. Oh my God, it was so bad. And then, but still, I'm still dragging this lard around wherever I go. And it's an inflammatory generator. This adipose tissue generates inflammatory markers, and that is, it's not a fun number to have. It's not a good thing to be in an inflammatory state. So this is why I've started incorporating hypnosis to get over some of these hijackings and these weirdo ideas that come from these improper foods that have been, taking over for such a long time. Even though I'm careful and I know better. It's not a first day yesterday kind of thing. So,
That's
ugh,
a good
so,
point. Yeah.
so frustrating.
Well, it is frustrating. And I can see how, because I look at these cases of obesity, and especially around here in Las Vegas, people can be outside riding their little scooters. And I see maybe three or four
Yeah.
obese, like we're talking 300 or 400 pounds. And I think how they can't eat enough to get that large. Where is the hijacking in the brain and the cranial nerves and the
Yes.
circulation?
Yep.
And all I can think of is toxicity. There's a
Yep.
toxicity in the liver. And why is that there? And I believe a lot has to go through, like you said, your senses and that is, think about it. It's interesting. We could pull this together with the dental. If you're chewing wrong and you're putting the wrong pressure on the trigeminal nerve, which goes to the nose and the eyes and the hearing, couldn't that cause a problem for weight? And I think it could very well cause a problem for weight gain. And that is where I believe dental is just the tip of the iceberg of exploring those. Like you said, we're in this in collaborating and we're in shared domain.
Yeah.
It's it's this upstream what we're doing. It's time to talk about shared domain. I'm so ready for conversations to be the village, so to speak, because the collaboration, since I was a brand new hygienist, I was exposed to shared domain thinking from European doctors. They share domain all the time. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was reprimanded for thinking shared domain thinking.
Yeah.
And right now, we have an opportunity with our podcast in our practitioners, and maybe there'll be medical doctors listening, or wellness or naturopath doctors, but in chiropractors. But we are want to put the shine the light of truth into these areas of discussion Taste buds, back to taste buds. How does a chiropractor get involved with the taste bud? I can tell you by getting the neck in alignment with the dentist and the chewing. Because if the food's not being chewed right, and or they're missing teeth, then they're not chewing, or they're chewing on plastic, or they're chewing on
Yep.
implants that aren't correctly aligned with the trigeminal nerves. The vagal nerve is affected and it's going to shut down, guess what? The liver. If you can't get the liver stimulated through the trigeminal nerve, you're going to shut down liver stimulation and filtration. And I can't tell you how many times, because I've been in car accidents, who hasn't? My neck is out of alignment. And then all those years of practicing as a hygienist, leaning over, every time I worked with Dr. Michelle Walker, and she would check the whole cranial suit, everything, the connection, she'd always say, your liver is so, it's stagnant. She goes, she'd work it out, to get the stimulation. And that came from the vagal nerves being stimulated or not being stimulated through my proper chewing, I'm sure. So yes, and hypnosis, I think, is a big part of helping the body redirect the signal, so that you're not going to get the signal of craving, but you will get the signal of satisfaction and
That's
craving.
yes,
So,
that's what I've determined. Um,
yeah.
Self-hypnosis is weak. It's better than nothing, and I've not found the right kind of hypnosis to do anything in person. So, it's a pretty powerful way to address these hidden things that are going on that you don't even know are playing around in the background.
Oh, totally.
So, yeah, it's so crazy. And, the vagus nerve also goes through, and I think it even innervates the diaphragm.
It
So
does.
the breathing diaphragm.
It
So
does.
you have holes in the diaphragm, which we learned about, which I didn't really appreciate up until recently. And when your diaphragm goes up and down, it's massaging and it's pulling that nerve and making it stretch and then relaxing it. And it's like a pump.
Yeah.
So this weekend, I was at a course in Redding, California, and talking about the floor of the mouth is the first diaphragm. So the floor of the mouth needs to be free, and it's very attached to just about all of the other muscles that you would be worried about, including the diaphragm. And then the third diaphragm would be the pelvic girdle area down in there. So this is why when we have tongue tie releases, people talk about digestion improving, constipation improving, pelvic floor issues disappearing. So it's kind of crazy that way. And so I really want to make sure that open wide, everything's attached. So I was the patient. It was a hands-on course, and of course I don't know anything. So I was the guinea pig, and my partner was a big fancy massage therapist lady who was almost 5 feet tall, really little lady. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what you're going to get out of this because I got a lot of padding. She's like, don't worry about it. So we were working on the kidneys. So she's doing whatever she's doing with kidneys. And then I said, what would happen if I put my tongue in a suction? So that would be how you want your tongue to be at rest. Maybe not suction, but up against the roof of your mouth. And for those of you who are listening and wondering what I'm talking about, if you click and then hold the tongue up there, so that would be a lingual palatal suction, often referred to as LPS. So I'm laying there, I'm like, well, what would happen if I did a suction? So I did a suction. She was like, whoa. And I said, oh. And so she was able to feel that my lower back was affected by stretching my tongue up against the roof of my mouth and opening my mouth. And then she felt it on the other side. So the right side she could feel it, the left side she could not. So that was one of the things that we learned in that course, was that people who have a tongue tie are very often more affected on the right than the left. Nobody's sure why. It's just a finding. And so, there you go. just all, and what's on the right side? Your liver. You have a kidney over there, gallbladders on top of there, right? So any of those conditions may be tied into a structure of the fascia under the tongue. And your meridian, your teeth meridians, if you've had a tooth out for braces, or if you've had a tooth out for whatever, a horse kicked you in the mouth or whatever, you were having teeth out, if that tooth is gone and your liver is reacting, it, I don't know, do you replace that tooth? Do you have any insight into that? What if you put an implant there instead? Is
Well,
it
what
better to just
you're
have a
looking at
space?
is you're talking about circulation, bar none. And that's where thermal imaging shows where the stagnation is or where the stress is or the damage, the nerve damage is with thermal imaging. And
Hmm.
I see it in the areas in the occlusion 100% of the time. So if you're missing a tooth, why is it missing? Number one, was there a breakdown in the system of circulation? Had to be. Just like when your eyesights go bad, it's circulation in the nerves. So I would look at the balancing or getting the synergistic alignment working with your team to replace that pressure. How it looks like, I don't know. I would say it would take a team effort. Could it be a flipper, a replaceable tooth, implant? Uh, it has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
So I would say that it would, and even Dr. Fonder's book talks about this, the replacement options. It's coming. Well, the Japanese they're growing new teeth in pigs, so
Right.
they will be able to put
Yeah.
chemicals and grow new. But I would say that there's an issue there that needs to be solved for each individual person with a team. And your team could have as many as two people or three people. But like your one the therapist that felt the release of the tension in that area in the organ, she's going to go through the nerves because the nerves in the neck are the communication and it's the actual thorough way and the free way to get into the body. And that's where your team will look at the mouth and the equilibration of where the teeth are or aren't, how it affects in the chewing, how it affects the swallowing and the tongue and how the tongue moves. That's so slight, but so major. And I would say that this shared domain has to happen yesterday because quality of life or people are suffering from, they're calling it now fibromyalgia,
Yeah.
and talking about all these different quote autoimmune
Yep.
diseases and things, and it's all simply related back to the alignment or the lack of circulation through the teeth and the facial nerves. And I would say that right now, I don't. I wish I could say, sure, go to Japan and get a new tooth. They don't, or and it's very rare that I could find dental people that understand the shared domain, even if they're biological dentists. This, the whole new area that we want to talk about and open up is open wide. Look at your teamwork and look at the options for this person and quit thinking isolated and in your vortex because that's gonna um, that will stifle any kind of healing long-term and quality of life for this person who could literally be walking with a walker. Had you put that tooth in there or fixed that area, it would have given the stimulation to the vagal nerve to get the balance in the breathing and the airway and the sleeping and quality of life from one tooth. And that's what do I know? I wish I could say. I wish I could say, yeah, here's the simple fix, but it is simple, but it would take
You
working with
just
a
have to keep
collaboration.
chiseling away to get to the root cause.
Yes,
That's really where we're at, I think.
absolutely. There's no question. There's no question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you try to get to things that aren't costing you a boatload of money. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Some, oh, the last week or so, I've had an opportunity to talk about the cost of repairing the mouth if it's not done in a child, and it's almost $100,000 to
Easily.
replace those four teeth that were taken out for braces, then moving everything forward, and then doing, you might even have to have double jaw surgery to move your thing forward, to give you sinus space, to give you sinus space up here, to give you a patent airway, to give you swallowing room. You know, the epiglottis is supposed to flop down and cover your lungs so that you don't get a sandwich in your lungs. And if that airway is this narrow, right, if you have this much room and the epiglottis can't really move, that's where all your vitamins are getting stuck. You know, all your supplements. The people who are watching are like, oh yeah, the supplements. You know, some of them are really big, but they should be able to pass through. You should have a patent airway and a patent, you know, esophagus and all the stuff that happens between here and here. It's kind of a busy area, but everything has to be big enough so everything can work. Everything has to work. So one of the things we talked about this past weekend too was recreating a cervical curve that impacts the airway. If you're working with some kind of a chiropractor or upper cervical chiropractor, it's really beneficial for them to have an x-ray to start. So you don't want them pushing your bones into your airway if you need to have dentistry done first. So, you know, and there, the crossover there isn't really happening. There were, I don't know, there were 18 people. I went with a chiropractor. There were maybe 4 or 5 other chiropractors and a lot of massage people and body worker type people. No dentists. There were 3 myofunctional therapists
Yes.
to work with
Oh,
dentists who are not airway focused. You know, no dentists. And he works with a lot of dentists in the area. So you know, there's room for
ocean wide.
improvement.
That's why we're upstream. That's why we're doing
Yeah,
to get the word out because dentist identification, they need to understand that they're dental physicians and they need to understand their role is not drill, fill, bill. Their role is way more vast and important, like crazy. And I was speaking with a clinic, medical dental clinic, and you just see the dentist light up when I say how important your role is in the quality of life. Dental physician, you are a major part in people's lifestyle. And that's
it's
just
not just about enamel towers. It's not just about micro carpentry. It's about establishing a quality of life that is also leading to a health span that is going to match the lifespan. You want that to be as close as possible.
it's so
Probably the most important picture I ever saw was a side-by-side picture of Dr. Ansel Keys, who demonized saturated fat, with Jack LaLanne. Okay, Jack LaLanne was an exercise guru. He was on television every morning. Every lady in the country did little Jack LaLanne exercises with their kitchen chair in the living room every day at whatever 8:30 after the kids were gone to school. And Ansel Keys died a long death. A long death. They died at about the same age. They were 99 and 101. Ansel Keys lived to 101, I think it was. He was in a wheelchair. He was one of those where he had no body tension. He was in a long-term care facility for a really long time before he passed away. And Jack LaLanne was still doing fingertip push-ups at age 99, right? So, and he ate from, remember the 4 food groups? We need to get back to the 4 food groups. That's all there are. 4. That's all you need to worry about. And eat equally from all 4. And that's how he lived his life. I think he was a little bit more vegetarian-ish kind of, but he still ate maybe meat once a day or something like that instead of 3. So we have room for improvement. And we have to look backwards to look forward, and we have to choose to go upstream and find out where the root cause is. Why are people getting so sick? The people you were mentioning with that were so obese that they have to have a cart, their fat cells are so gigantic, and they're probably filled with every toxin that was foisted on them. So not only that, Victoria, something that we didn't even talk about today is those people are on a pile of pills.
Oh, true.
And that is half the toxins or
Mhm.
more that are living in those cells. I follow a lot of carnivores on YouTube, especially, where they only eat meat all day, every day for years and years and years. And a lot of them talk about a detox at the beginning, where they do get kind of sick, where the fat cells are shrinking and allowing all of this direct back into their bloodstream, which goes into the kidneys, which goes into the liver and down the blah, 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 you know. So food is information.
Mhm.
Food is important for overall health. There is no reason to have birthday cake every single day. There is no reason to have a treat after every meal. There's no reason to,
I say treat yourself, but treat it with the right nutritional value.
treat
But
yourself with respect.
and we're lecturing again on this whole thing, and people are going to feel oppressed and not the freedom to choose. I say, listen to your body talk. Your body talk, listen to the cravings. If the cravings are becoming more processed food, that's where you're talking about your hypnosis or just decompress, because I see the two types of reaction in life, and most people are living in sympathetic mode, which is
Yep.
eat quick, think quick, drive quick, talk quick, sleep quick. I mean, everything seems to be in this speed mode. And now you've got the cell phone here, which puts everybody into I can't live without it. And what did we do 20, 30 years ago? I didn't even know it existed, and I could survive. Now people can't survive if they leave the house. It's not. And this information access is wonderful. I'm not saying it's not, but how we use it and how we let it control our response is going to be how we control our response to foods and
Right.
our choices and our cravings. Our body will say, I need quick energy right now because I'm running from a bear. So it's going to grab that quick sugar versus I'm relaxing at the lake and I have a beautiful sunset and I'm in parasympathetic, and that chip doesn't really taste good, but what tastes good is that strawberry or that, whatever. I mean, or,
I've never,
or a
ever in
barbecue.
my life chosen a strawberry over a potato chip. That's that's my reality. I would never, never, it would
Well,
never
I'm just
happen.
saying that food does have a different
Yeah,
flavor outside than it does inside. But I'm just saying that the food, even a barbecue, that the parasympathetic response that we could really encourage others to pay attention to, just start there. Am I stressed out when I eat?
yeah,
I have told so many of my patients when I was practicing, I'd rather see you eat a chocolate bar, dark chocolate, which is good for your liver, while you're relaxed, than eat an apple while you're stressed out. I said, because the way that you're putting this food in the body is not really in the right environment. And so your body will store the toxicity because it can't digest it because you're running from a bear. And sympathetic and parasympathetic are two areas I would love to spend some time on another podcast, educating our practitioners, because when we see our cases and we see what we see, we lecture them on their performance or their lack of home care or whatever, but it could be that they're living their life in the moment of sympathetic, and
yep.
no matter what they eat, it could be, like you said, the four food groups, but they're not digesting the food in an environment of neurology intake, of even tasting the food. They're just
I know.
pushing it in.
They're
And
just shoving it through.
yeah, and I see that as where we can, in our open wide thinking and work in shared domain, is, stop and smell the roses, but, give them enough information when we take these assessments to say, look at this tongue chart, or look at this, and
Yeah.
help them realize to be in touch with their body talk and listen. Know when their body's talking, they're more sensitized to the messages versus not. That's all I'm saying. And on that note,
Excellent. We covered
that's
a lot of
what I will.
territory.
Yeah.
A lot of territory. So I'm very happy that we were taking such a deep dive into such a simple, so simple. You've been doing it since before you were born, but really we lose track so dramatically.
Yeah.
So, how can people get more in touch with you, Victoria? And is your website up and running?
It
Woo!
is. It is actually very much so. Drlinks.com. That's DRLINXS.com. And it's about the collaboration and the certification of taking this thermal dental medical thermography scans so that you can see these issues that Shirley and I are talking about very simply and easily, and then show your patients. More importantly, have a visual to show them where the imbalance. I say imbalances. One practitioner said, "Is it really imbalanced or is non-synergistic?" And I said, "I think it's both." But the actual poor circulation or the damages is where, isn't that where we get the most joy, when people can correct those damages and start fixing themselves with our encouragement? That gives me a lot of satisfaction. But yes, drlinks.com is up and running just fine. And there's information for you to put your emails in, and learn more about it, and learn about the different types of certifications for the dental and the wellness care providers. Yes. And Shirley,
Excellent.
your work too is on there. You're on the directory. So yes, we're in shared domain. Link.
So our website is primalair.com, and there's a lot of information on there. I do have some videos on YouTube, some other videos, which really create a lot of background information about why myofunctional therapy turned out to be so, so important. And we have a new person that's doing our social media, so you're going to see a lot more social media. So we even have a little footprint now on Instagram. Both of us are still resisting the TikTok, so there's that. And what else did I want to say? So I've signed my son up to be our artist in residence. So we're going to have some more, some of our display materials and stuff like that are going to be having an upgrade. So
I just
I'm
have one,
excited about that.
one note to say is, when we have these podcasts and we're discussing what we discuss, the takeaway is, and it is our goal, is to enhance the services for the provider. Enhancing
Oh,
their
yeah.
services will be hiring us or hiring our consultation, because we have been in this for so many years. We have so much knowledge. And then also the takeaway for the dental hygienists, our sisters, to know that they have career options in the future of this shared domain, that they're not
Yep.
stuck in an environment anymore. It's done. The environment, the doors wide open. There's no locked doors. And it might not be taught in school, but it's going to be taught by us. And we're going to talk how to work in a team environment. And the most important is helping others feel better and have a higher quality of life. And the message is, work with us in your businesses, in your healthcare businesses, to incorporate these types of services for this purpose.
Excellent. Thank you for reminding me and everybody. We'll work with everybody. We want everybody to be successful. We can't stand it. So thank you, everybody, and stay tuned for other episodes. We're trying to get these out once a week at least. So thank you for spending an hour with us. And if you have questions or comments, feel free, load them up.
Load them up.
See ya. Bye, Victoria.
Bye, Shirley. Well, that was fun. It's so much fun with you. I always wonder how it will turn out, when we start down this path, but we're so compatible, and you bring what we need, with the treatments, and we bring with the assessments and the knowledge. But yes, it's oh boy, there's so much. We have our work cut out for us, don't we, Shirley?
No, we really do. And when we start out, we're like, okay, well, what about a bolus, And all of a sudden it turned into this really meaningful piece of information that everybody needs to hear. Nobody's talking about a bolus.
Oh,
All these nutrition channels that I follow, nobody talks about a bolus.
Oh, and they're not talking about circulation, and they're not talking about hypnosis. They're not talking about cravings. They're not talking about synergistic alignment in the cranial nerve and the chewing and the stimulation. We are the leaders, and the fact that we just started, I feel this momentum. And that's why as soon as we can get these started posted, and be thinking, I thought about this too, Shirley, we need to team up our consulting business package. I could put it, these offices I'm speaking with, I'm thinking they need your services, and we have a consultation that I see it. I'm just maybe look at it, but in the package form, and maybe that's where Julie can help us too. But I definitely say, well, what if an office says, yeah, we want, what do you charge? What's your hours? And can you come in and consult us and set us up? Maybe that's the direction we look at, is how to set them up so that they can increase their services in these areas of providing what they can advertise on their website. How cool is that? I mean,
Yeah.
if I saw a website that said, a dental website that said, you sleep with a husband that snores? Yeah. You want it fixed? Yes. Here's some, before. Oh, yeah, Dr. Smith, my husband snores. They're not going for their dental teeth. They're going for the snoring, and quality of life. So that's how I see, really getting this shared domain out there. But hire us as consultants to set them up. They're not set up. I see them run off to these biological dental meetings, and they come back, and I heard them at the show with you at that IOMT. It's like, okay, so you got educated in it. How do you set it up? How do you put the steps in? What are the codes? Yeah. What are the actual implementations? They don't have any of that. And how does the dental hygienist get involved? Oh, I don't even think about that. That's where we can really pull it off and put it into setting them up in the systems. Maybe we could talk about that in a different a podcast of what we would do to set them up. And that way they, and we can talk about from greet screening what's next, and maybe have some screenshots. So say, I'm just throwing it on the table, but we have a software now that we can use, and it's just in its introduction stages. I'm open to adding and doing what it needs to do and so, but it would be very fascinating to pull it off, because we want to be branded and hired and then train others to train and to implement in the practices, right? That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, we want everybody to be successful for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if our upload still going. So
exciting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel Eric, he's like, go do it. Why wait for all these other quote business advisors? I'm done.
Yeah.
And
okay, so how about next Saturday? Is that going to work for you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, same time.
Mm-hmm. Works great. It's quiet today. I'm at my location working out of the shop, Mike's shop on the other side.
Mm.
And so it's very nice. Sometimes they work Saturdays, but even if they did, it's so quiet in here.
I didn't notice that it was not quiet before.
It could have been that the Saturday they were here working on cars and, lots of hustle and bustle coming in and out. Also, it could have been the airport too, because the airport, the way the weather is now, they might be taking off going east versus west. So the airport, all of a sudden you hear this rumbling, because the planes are taking off towards the office versus taking off on the other side of the landing strip. Very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. In the OneNote, we have show number 6 is next. And I put down anti-activities. Sitting all day, not kissing a baby on the lips, which is still hot on my list of shitty things. What else is anti-human? Not chewing.
It's interesting because the children don't have teeth when they're born and they're sucking. And how does that suck help with the communication in the brain versus the bottle and the breast tissue? That's interesting. And just the formation and even how you talked about your hypnosis meditation and changing your cravings. Could that have been programmed in you while you were an embryo? I wonder because I think my and I had when I was 16, I was hit by a car, and it wasn't too long after that my thyroid started to shut down. So they put me on these thyroid pills, and all I did was want to eat sugar and salt. And then I met a person that did hypnosis, and I was starting to put on weight when I was about 16. And I was maybe 10 pounds to 15 overweight. And it was just after the car accident. Gee, I wonder why all that head trauma and injury to the nerves. Okay. He gave me a hypnosis treatment when I was 16, saying I would not crave sugar. And if I did, it would end like as soon as I ate it. And that was when I was 16. And here I'm 65. And to that day, I still don't crave sugar. And if I do crave it, I can't eat much, just a tiny bit. And
Yeah.
so it's very powerful, that programming in the brain that he did with the hypnosis. And but still, like my liver's not, and that's all vagal nerves. Like you said, the breathing and the lifting and the diaphragm is coming from the vagal nerve compression issues. And can Paul Whitcomb reverse that through his courses teaching the dentist? And that's what I have advertised on the site right now. He wants to come to Vegas at the end of February and teach dentist. I'm trying to recruit anybody, to be taught. He wants to teach me how to do this technique. I will learn it, but I don't know if I want to be hands-on treating as much as I want to
Yeah.
be teaching and observing, putting all my observations in
Yeah.
a communication system. That's where my heart is, the communications. So, I think it's great that, and I asked him about the dental. He knew nothing about it, very little. And
Well, and then he brought up to me the other day, occlusion. I said, don't even talk about occlusion. It's a red herring to everything. Teeth are never supposed to touch. They're only supposed to accidentally touch when you're chewing food. So occlusion is off limits. I think it's just stupid. They try to adjust occlusion with carbon paper that they invented in, the 1910s. And it's ridiculous that they keep maneuvering all of these teeth which don't grow back. You have no way to recover all of that intervention. And I don't think that occlusion has anything to do with anything. I just don't.
well,
Not unless you get a lot of dental care.
Well, when I look at malalignment, that's where you have to, when you bite,
So it's not the teeth that's the problem.
it's the neck. Yeah. When you're chewing, and this is how sensitive your bite is. Have you ever had sand in between your teeth? And you could
Oh,
feel
sure.
that's how
Yeah.
sensitive the bite is. And
Uh-huh.
then what Dr. Walker was saying, when you lay down, your jaw drops, and they're
Yep.
adjusting your jaw joint to your neck, which is out of alignment. So you really need to have the alignment in the vertebrae and in the muscles and all this the ligaments that are attached here. And then when I look at panorexes and I see that this is atrophied and this jaw and this joint is not, what's going on? And that's going to affect their eyesight. It's going to affect their hearing and smell.
It is, and it might put their teeth out of occlusion, but if you grind away at the teeth, you're not on the right surface. You're not correcting the right thing. The
Well,
teeth,
you're right, but they're putting on dental restorations that are not
yep,
natural environment.
right.
So we have to talk about occlusion as much as you hate it. The occlusion is an indicator. I'm not saying
There you go. I can go along with that.
both is an indicator, and that's how I teach it, as an indicator, because the indicator shows me where all the other issues in the poor communication is. And the indicator is tori. I'd love to talk about tori and the density
Mm.
in the bone, that the body innately has an intelligence. And we didn't get a chance to talk about that, but boy, I had this conversation in the last week and a half about the innate intelligence in the body. Get out of its way, just get the blocks out, and it will do its job through the circulation issues. But yeah, I would say use it as an indicator, not to fix, but use it as an indicator to work with your team, and refine it. It's no different than using those little balancers that construction workers use on the counter. If the
Mm.
counter doesn't have that balance and the liquid isn't balanced, what do? They try and level it. So it's about this leveling. Even the shoulders can get out of level, and the hips and the knees, all because of this lack of leveling. And car accidents are big, how the baby is born and pulled out in the neck, and or the falling out of a tree or falling off your bike. That's why I collaborate these timeline events, so that they can see that's where your body tolerated. And Dr. Fonda talks about it adjusted and it tolerated, but it's going to affect what we see. I mean, the outcome is what we see when we're doing our assessments, taking and teaching these offices, that everybody's body's different. We can't put them into a box like dentistry does and says, you have a cavity, you need a filling. Oh, you have a
Mhm.
broken tooth, you need a crown. That
Okay, I gotta go though. So let's so look at that, look at the OneNote and add some more stuff in there so that we capture some of the stuff that we talked about. Um, we've got a guest coming up and that'll be cool.
So number 6 is okay, got it. You know what? I have it right here on my laptop. I mean, my desktop, just to, okay,
Mhm.
great.
And then number 7 is how to work together in a team. I think that would be a good one there.
You know what? Put it, and I'll add it to here, but how they're listening to us, and then they're going to say, well, we want this. Okay, where do they go to want it? Let's put our package together for consulting, because we're getting to the point now in these shows where obviously we have the credibility to put it in and implement a
Mhm.
system into their business.
Let's see what happens with, let's just talk, yeah, maybe it's just number 7 is too early. Anyway, it's a good idea to keep some notes in there. I'm just going to put everything up on YouTube until I can figure out the what you call it there. So
And we will.
Rumble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. All
All
right,
right.
Shirley,
See you
have a
next
good day
week.
next week.